So this will be live on Facebook and will be available on Facebook afterwards. And also I will post this on YouTube. One moment. I'm my own virtual assistant, so I guess I'm my live assistant. Okay. All righty. Well, welcome everyone. Delighted to have you all here with me and my friend and teacher and all around awesome jazz person, Ben Creighton Griffiths. And he's dialing in from Wales. So it's past dinner time where you are.
Yeah, pretty well. Getting there. I haven't had food just yet, but I'll have some after.
Always feed the harpist first.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So welcome, Ben. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to chat for a bit. Ben and I are going to chat for a bit. And if you have questions, just pop them in the chat window. In fact, let's start there. If everyone will take just a moment and put in the chat where you're dialing in from, it'd be nice to know where we're coming from. I'm in Denver, Colorado, and we'll see where you all are. I know where some of you are. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Southeast Idaho, Wisconsin. All right. So I invited Ben to come and chat with us today because, hi, Southern California, because he has an upcoming premiere of an exciting new piece that he's composed for improvised harp and orchestra. And I want to hear how you do that. How do you figure that out, organize all those people into an improvisation? So, but what I'd like to start with is, because I don't know if everyone knows your background, tell us a little bit about, I know you started very young.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of your story.
Yeah, sure. So I started playing the harp when I was 4. I started obviously playing on the lever harp. I played piano for a little bit before I started the harp. And then obviously, well, that's something I've kind of continued ever since. And when I was younger, I mainly did classical work. I had my teachers were Anne Griffiths, Catherine Finch, Alan Bennett. So I had quite a fantastic selection of classical teachers and did quite a lot of the competitions and things when I was younger, and things like the Junior Liliaski and a few other sort of things like that. And then sort of on the side, when I was younger, I started learning some jazz on the piano and trying a little bit on the harp, obviously very inspired by harpists like Park Stickney and Deborah Henson Conant and people like that. And then sort of when I was at the age of considering going to university, I decided that actually I wanted to go down the jazz route more than classical. So I didn't go anywhere to study and kind of went straight into doing lots of gigs and playing and stuff. And really, I've been doing that sort of full time ever since I left regular school, and just been sort of growing things ever since. And now I do quite a big selection of work. I still do a lot of classical playing. I do a lot of playing in a couple of orchestras and stuff here, and some solo classical work as well. But mainly my focus is more on jazz these days. Different styles and different types. I've got a couple of different bands. I've got some solo projects, and a fair bit of composing and stuff these days as well. And then of course some teaching. So it's a bit of a variety of things, and I get to travel a lot, which is always really good. You get to meet lots of interesting people and go to different festivals and concerts and things. So yeah, that's an incredibly brief recap. If you're really interested in knowing all of like the little bits, then there's a sort of full biography on my website with sort of everything on there. But yeah, that's basically. So I went from starting with the more sort of traditional classical stuff, and now I'm at something quite different.
Yeah. So when you say you're, when did you really like decide jazz was it for you?
Well, I was kind of enjoying doing, I still very much enjoyed, performing both sort of styles and stuff of music. But I kind of made a more conscious decision when I was in sixth form. So in the UK, sixth form is just before the 2 years before you go to university, when you're sort of like 17, 18 sort of thing. So it was at that point, because obviously I had to make the choice if I was going to go and study somewhere. And I was looking at sort of conservatoires and classical tuition and what I wanted to do with that. And sort of it was at that stage, did I want to sign on to do a degree and all that sort of stuff, and go to one of the academies or one of the colleges and spend 4 years plus studying classical music, and very much going down that route. And actually, when it came to sort of making that decision, for me, it was actually, no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something different. So that's kind of like if you want to nail down a point at which I chose, I guess it's then. But I still, it wasn't a matter of, well, I guess it was a matter of choosing one over the other, because it was necessary to do that. Because obviously, if you're going to go and do a degree or whatever in studying classical music, you have to dedicate all your time to that, and you're doing all your practice and your focus and things on that. And actually, that's not what I wanted to do at that stage. And it's still, for me, it's still absolutely the right choice, because I'm loving what I'm doing now. And I still get to play lots of classical music, particularly like in an orchestral setting. But yeah, so it'd be kind of around that sort of 17 sort of age that I made the choice, because it was forced upon me by having to decide what was I going to do.
And so then did you go to school for jazz? Was there a program for that? With individual teachers? How did you proceed from there?
It's a little different now, because there's a couple of harpists who are on various faculties in the UK, doing sort of, you can do at the Royal Welsh Academy, for example, you can do a degree in jazz harp. Well, I think so anyway. There's a harpist, Amanda Whiting, who's great within the jazz department there and stuff. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. So I don't think, I mean, it feels like a long time ago for me now. I can't recall the possibility of me going to do something like that at the time. It'd be a bit different now if I was 18 now. So yeah, there wasn't really any options that I was aware of. So I just kept on. I had an amazing jazz piano teacher, Julian Martin, who I worked with since I was like 6 on the piano, studying jazz. So I kept on working with him. I kept on trying to grab lessons where I could with people like Park Stickney and other sort of harpists who were already sort of doing the jazz sort of stuff. And then, of course, I started doing a lot of playing with more experienced jazz musicians on other instruments as well, and kind of learning on the job a bit. So it was kind of that sort of stuff. So nothing formal, and nothing more structured than going to see someone for a lesson once a week sort of thing. So nothing official.
So you're really a pioneer then. You and Park and Deborah and because there are more jazz harpists now than there were 10 years ago, but back then you had to make your own way.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily label myself quite like that, but yeah, there's more options, and there's an ever-growing list of options now if you want to do something more formalized, which is really great to see, because it's going to open up more opportunities for younger harpists who want to consider something apart from your traditional classical harp sort of studies. So that's really great to see. But yeah, it's certainly the case that there wasn't up until now too much that I was aware of, or that was kind of like an obvious sort of path. So that's great, and I'm hoping sort of, if you have this sort of discussion in 10 years time, it will be the case that actually the majority of countries have at least a couple of options of colleges and conservatoires where you could go to if you want to do harp in a jazz setting, either within the harp department or within the jazz department. So I guess that would kind of be something that's really good to see, and it's great to see it going that way as well. It's the right direction of travel for the instrument and for the genre as well.
Mm-hmm. So as you know, I live in Denver and have friends in the jazz department at University of Denver, and the they didn't have, and I don't know if they have a jazz harp program particularly, but one of my friends who's a voice teacher works with harpists.
Yeah.
And so she's had harp students who she's been teaching them how to do the jazz aspects of
Yeah.
that. And then, like learning herself, she's a pianist, but there are, of course, particular things to the harp that you can't
Yeah.
easily do on that you can easily do on piano, but you can't do so easily on the harp. And so
Yeah.
they are offering that kind of thing here.
Yeah, that's good. I would also say as well, I'm a firm believer that you don't need to go and get a degree to study jazz is the other thing, is the sort of second side to it. I mean, none of the original sort of developers of jazz and not many of the greats at all had college degrees, right? So you go back to the 1920s, 1930s and whatever, or those great musicians in New Orleans and whatever like that, they didn't have any formal education in music. Most of them couldn't read music, right? So I also do firmly believe that it is, no matter what the situation is with kind of institutions and stuff, there's those two options of you go in the institution or you go out of it. Both are valid, both are absolutely fine. And I'm not, I'm also personally not a fan of being in that sort of formal setting as well. So to be honest, I might have still chosen this path had I not been able to, had I had the option to go and try and do something more formal. So there is that side to it as well. It's not 100% necessary. I don't think there's options. So
yeah. So I think that's a really important message that I want everybody here to hear, is that you can have a very fulfilled, amazing, wonderful harp life without going to school. You hang out with the people who are playing the music that you want to play, study with private teachers like I've studied with you, and I've studied a little bit with Park and Deborah as well, and then made my own way, making my own music, and in a lot of ways letting the harp tell me what I can play on it and what I can't. So that's I think it's really important for everybody to hear, especially in this group as improvisers. It's really about you making your own music, and that's an exploration that I think is best done outside of a formal setting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about when you started improvising, or maybe you've always been improvising at some level.
So my the jazz piano teacher I mentioned, Julian, I met him when I was like 6 or 7. We have a chain of pizza restaurants in the UK called Pizza Express, which they're quite nice to be fair. And one of the big things with Pizza Express is they have quite a big connection in jazz. Like their main London venue in Soho is like an actual jazz club, and it's one of like the top ones in the UK. It's very well regarded. So quite often, I mean, it's not so much now, but quite a few years back, they often had a lot of live jazz at their regular restaurants throughout the country as well. And he was playing, we were there for food, and he was doing some solo sort of jazz piano, which I really liked. And I'd been, at that point, I'd been looking and trying to learn some of Deborah's compositions on the Levine harp. So I was kind of interested in some of the more alternative styles of music already. And then we just asked him whether, we could bring him up and have some sessions, and I started going to him for lessons, and started immediately. I think the first thing we did was just looking at like 12-bar blueses and stuff like that. But straight away we were going into doing bits of improvisation on the piano. And then going from there, we started looking at a little bit of like, how could you transfer stuff onto the harp and that sort of thing. So probably from around about that age, 7 or 8, that was where I was really beginning to like properly have a go at doing some improvising and actually learning from someone who knows what they're doing, sort of the theory and whatever behind it as well. So yeah, that was kind of when I started first doing anything like that.
Awesome. So would you say that it's a combination then of playing with other people, so you get the feel of it, as well as then studying all the chord theory and the chord changes and which notes to pick and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you're specifically talking about jazz, I feel jazz is quite a collaborative art form in general. Generally, in the jazz world, the focus is more on bands than solo artists. Like I mean, obviously with the combination of instruments you have is only really pianists who do that much in the way of solo performing, and even then you do a little bit of solo stuff, but then you mainly play with bands is kind of how it works. And I see the harp in the same sort of role as piano, I guess. So there's a lot that you learn by playing with other instruments and other players, sort of not as in that you formally learn, but you learn by listening and performing with them and practicing and kind of like listening to what they're doing and sharing ideas and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite good having that alongside obviously formal, some sort of formal education, like say a one-to-one lesson where you're being taught, oh, this is why we do this, this is the theory, this is how we kind of do it. And then of course you put that into practice when you play with other people. A good example of that was, again, Julian, he still runs monthly jam nights, which I started going to sort of quite soon after starting learning with him, to kind of like get used to like playing. Obviously it was very informal and whatever, but get used to like playing with some other musicians and other combinations and stuff. And then after a little while we took the harp there and sort of saw what was going on. So it's quite important, I think, to try and work with other musicians as early as you can, and get sort of a feel for things that are going on there.
Mm-hmm. So when you first went, you were playing piano?
I think so. It was quite a long time ago, so I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure we would have gone quite a few times first, just trying a bit on piano, because obviously that's what I started with, and it was a little bit later that I was kind of doing things on the harp. And also the venue where it used to be, the parking was a nightmare, so I'm sure we didn't take the harp first time, because it was really, really difficult actually. So yeah, I'm pretty sure we would have done that and then taken the harp along a little bit later.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the different groups that you're playing with now.
So I've got, outside of the solo stuff I do, the two main projects I've got at the moment. I've got the Transatlantic Hot Club, and I've got Tube. So the Transatlantic Hot Club is a hot club swing outfit. Think of sort of the hot club quintet of France and Django Reinhardt, Stefan Grappelli, that sort of style. And that is, I run that with a very good friend of mine, Adrian Chevalier. We've known each other for like 10 years. He's French, and he's an amazing jazz violinist, but he's based in New York. He's been in New York for over a decade now, I think. And yeah, we met at a lovely harp festival in the French Caribbean nearly 10 years ago. And then since then we've been kind of like traveling around doing gigs, quite a lot in the UK. We're going to be doing hopefully a lot in the US. We got some stuff coming up in France this year, and a couple of tours back to the Caribbean and stuff as well. And that's all a lot of fun. And basically the idea with it is the core of the outfit is myself on harp and him on violin. And then we do play duo, but we like to kind of have trios and quartets and whatever, and we get joined by different combinations. So like when we're in the UK, like I book the band from players and stuff I know here, and when we're in other places, like he'll grab different players and whatever like that. So it's not a fixed band, that it's a rotating lineup. And we've had all sorts of instruments in there, obviously a lot of bass and sometimes guitars, accordion, wind and stuff as well. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. And then on the opposite end of things, Tube is it's like I call it jazz fusion, but it's less of the jazz and more of the fusion. So the setup's a bit of a rock band, and at the moment it's a trio with I play harp and I play synths and keys and stuff in it as well. And then we got drums, and then we got electric bass, and also sometimes double on that as well. And the music for that is really varied. So a lot of original compositions that I've done, a lot more avant-garde and out there, a lot of like influences from rock and metal and sort of funk and stuff as well, and then some covers and things. So it's two very different projects.
So when you're talking about Tube, do you use pedals? Do you use different sound enhancers on the harp?
Yeah, there's a lot of so Tube, there's an awful lot of sound manipulation in it. So I do Tube is always on the electric harp because it has to be. I run the harp through quite a lot of effects pedals and stuff for that, and do various things with the sounds. Like we do a cover of When the Levee Breaks by Led Zeppelin. That's all through distortion. I use a lot of like delays and phases and synth pedals and stuff as well. And then I have two synthesizer keyboards as well that I'm using at the same time for different things. So it's a lot more in terms of like soundscaping, and using the harp to create something very different and actually be quite divorced from the sound of a harp. There's only a few bits. If you go through and listen to some of our music, there's only a handful of bits where you listen to it and actually pick it out as a harp. There's other times you'd think it's a different instrument, and that's kind of the idea with it, really.
That's really interesting. That's kind of what Pat Metheny does with his guitar, is he makes it into a guitar synthesizer. And so I'm very interested in like what your pedal board setup is, and which may be a trade secret, I don't know.
No, it's just so I don't for ease, for like practical ease, I don't have an actual pedal board because it's a bit difficult. The way I have it is I have the harp like this, and then I have the keys sort of coming across me that way. And obviously I've got 2 keyboard stands and a bunch of pedals with that as well. So I can't actually have a proper fixed board, which is quite annoying. So I would like to have one. It would make things a lot easier. But I mean, a typical chain, if I have a think, I usually have like I've got a Boss OD3, which is an overdrive. I've got a nice Digitech synth wah, which is actually for a bass rather than for a guitar, which works really nicely on the wire strings. And then I've got a nice Boss, no, not Boss, Digitech delay pedal, which I usually have in the set. And then usually there's a phaser in there as well. I try not to have more than 3 or 4 unless I really need it. Just it makes things a little bit easier. It makes the set a little bit cleaner on stage and stuff as well. Because obviously I'm using the keyboards as well, so I don't have to do all of my soundscaping or all of my sort of stuff with the harp. I can do a lot with the keys and kind of combine the two as well. So yeah, that's kind of generally where it's at, but it depends on what the program is. Sometimes it can be different, sometimes it can be more, sometimes it can be a bit less. It's changeable usually.
So one of the things that I struggle with when I'm trying to do that kind of manipulation is the long decay on the harp. And especially when you're just distorting that, it just becomes a mess. Do you have thoughts on how you handle that?
Well, some of it I just delegate out to whoever's doing sound, and it's their problem. Because it's not 100%. When you're playing in a venue, it's not, the sound is not 100% down to the band or the act on stage. There is an element of it. I don't mean that without any disrespect either. Like it's you know, you've got to work with the people in the venue and stuff that you're at. So some of it is working with them. You can, I mean, there's a few options. Obviously you can try and EQ things a little bit, and you know, the big problem, well, not problem, but the big thing on like the electric harp, like say this Hancock, is the bass is really strong on the DI, which is great. I absolutely love it. And then you put it through some pedals and it can be too much, so you just have to you know, fiddle a little bit and try and cut some of the bass frequencies out. It's not necessarily about the pedal, but it can be about the material you're playing as well. So if you're going to use an effects pedal that you know has maybe some unwanted side effects sound wise, then you can change what you're actually playing to work a little bit better. So for example, when I'm using delay pedals, I try not to do too much down on the wires and sort of the bottom end of the harp, because that really gets a bit of a mess and becomes a bit too strong. So I'm using a bit more up the top end of the harp, and it's less of an issue. And also distortion specifically, I'll only ever play a single line when it's distorted. I'll never play chords, never play any of that stuff, because that just gets too out of control and too wild. So I'm just using it as a single line to maybe do like a guitar solo style thing, some blues scale or whatever like that. I don't start playing like proper full chords because it just becomes a mess.
Okay, that's really good advice. So I want to talk a little bit about the premiere that you've got coming up.
Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit about how this idea came to you and how it's evolved and what it's going to be about?
Yeah, sure. So I've written a concerto for Jazz Harp and Symphony Orchestra, which is being premiered on March the 19th in Malvern in the UK with an orchestra called the Schnauzer Symphony Orchestra. So I've been composing a fair while. A lot of the compositions I do, for example, like the tube stuff, none of it's written down, and none of it's published. And to be honest, none of it probably ever will be published because it's very specific sort of arrangements for literally our band and how it works. But I wanted to begin to do a bit more like formal arrangements. Obviously, some people might know I've got like a jazz harp series and some little kind of like compositions, but I wanted to do some like larger scale works. And obviously one of the difficulties with that is then you write these works and you have to get them performed. And that's very hard if you decide to like write, say, a symphony or something, then that's a bit tricky to pitch sometimes, but writing a concerto, I guess, is not so tricky, because then I say, well, I've written a concerto and I can perform it with you, sort of thing. But actually, it kind of worked the other way around, because I had ideas for doing something, but I hadn't written it. And then Chandos are, so they're an amateur symphony orchestra in Malvern, and we've got quite a few of these around the UK. And it's great for me. I've got quite a few of them that I play with, and I go in freelance with them, because a lot of amateur orchestras tend to not have, they don't tend to have harpists, they don't tend to have like percussion players and sort of those more specialist instruments. So it's a good thing for me to be able to go in. I get some work, but I get the opportunity to learn lots of repertoire with lots of different orchestras. And Chandos are the first one of those that I started doing years ago. I think I've been doing stuff with them for like over 10 years. So they were very kind to say to me last year, would I like to do a concerto with them sometime this year? I said, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And I sort of took a little bit of a punt and just said, how would you like to, instead of just doing a harp concerto, would you like to try something completely crazy and try a new jazz harp concerto that I'm sort of working on, have ideas on, and want to kind of do with you. And it was great that they took a punt on that. So we agreed to that. And obviously I had the full sort of writing process last year. Most of it was written in August and September. And now it's ready. Literally the parts got posted to the orchestra today. So yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work. I mean, most of it, to be honest, I'd finished the actual writing last year, but there was a lot of like admin stuff and score setting and stuff to do. So yeah, that's all done. It's gone to them. They start doing some rehearsals, I think sometime next month. And then obviously I've got some rehearsals with them in March, and then the premiere's on the 19th. So yeah. So it's obviously a jazz harp concerto is going to be quite like unconventional anyway. So because it was going to be unconventional, I've been really unconventional with everything, with the structure, the style, everything like that. So it's not in 3 movements, it's in 5. It's not fully written out. There's large improvised sections for the harp. So hopefully it's not going to be too off-putting, I guess, conducting it, because there's going to be entire sections where the harp part's just blank, because that's I'm going to be filling in the blanks there. The orchestral part is all fully written out, obviously, because it's designed for a classical orchestra, and it's designed for a symphony orchestra. It could be pared down, I guess, as well. I'm going to look into stuff like that after the premiere. But it's written for full strings, 2 of every wind instrument, standard, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, a fairly large brass section. So there's 4 horns, 2 trumpets, 3 trombones, and tuba. And then a percussion section of 3 players, and specifically a jazz drummer, someone who's got experience doing like improvised big band sort of style stuff. So a friend of mine, John, who is the new drummer for Tube, is going to be doing the drumming for the premiere, and he gave me a little bit of help when we were notating the parts as well, because notating drum scores was something new to me on this project. So that's going to be really good. And yeah, so it's 5 movements that go through different styles. So the first movement is quite a modern 5/4 prelude. It's the most modern of all the movements in terms of the writing, and it kind of sets up some of the harmonic and melodic material for later on in the piece. The second movement is a waltz. It's kind of a little bit kind of Eastern European, Balkan, kind of inspired by some of the gypsy jazz stuff. But then also there's some sort of like Strauss style sections in there, because I wanted everything to have a bit of a classical edge to it as well. I didn't want it to be completely away from orchestral repertoire, because I wanted it to be able to sit quite nicely in programs, so it's not so outlandish that it basically doesn't get performed. The third movement is a ballad. It's a very traditional sort of, think of your sort of Errol Garner sort of misty style ballads, but a little bit more James Bondy, I guess, with some of the scoring and sort of film score style. The fourth movement is a Latin movement that goes through several different styles, including bossa, some son manchuno, and some songo groove stuff as well. And then the last movement is like a 1930s jive blues sort of thing. So yeah, going through different styles and hopefully kind of entertaining people along the way. It's about 23 minutes long, 24 minutes long, kind of that sort of range. So
wow. Oh, I need to get my transporter fixed so I can come over and see it.
Yeah, so yeah, we've got the one. I'm hoping to get some other performances of it. I mean, obviously it's not easy because it is hard to program harp concertos anyway, because they're fairly niche. And then obviously saying it's a jazz harp concerto, that requires specific orchestration, and also it has to be an electric harp. That's also very important because unlike a lot of harp concertos, the scoring is very thick, and there's sections where the entire orchestra is playing and the harp's expected to be heard over the top improvising. So there is no choice other than amplification. So that also rules out certain venues, which is obviously a bit of a pain. But yeah, so it is a little bit different, but I'm hoping it's the kind of thing that people might, will be interested in, and we'll have sort of more performances. And I'd love to, I've been obviously starting to practice it properly the last couple of weeks and enjoying playing it and stuff. So I'd love to be sort of doing that again if I can. So that's the aim for the next few years, and maybe to get it recorded as well. But getting a symphony orchestra recorded is never a cheap or easy endeavor. So that's something it's kind of on the 2-year sort of plan sort of thing. So
yeah. So Justine asked, will the premiere be live streamed?
I'm not aware that it's going to be live streamed. I would love for that to happen, but that's not so much a question for me, and it's a question for the orchestra, because it's not the only thing in the program. It's been paired with a few other things. I will ask the question, and maybe, I don't know, maybe if they're interested, then I will certainly be doing a thing on Facebook if it's going to be live streamed. So I'll see what I can do, but I can't promise anything, unfortunately.
And yeah, Rebecca Moritsky, who lives here in Denver, she says, I absolutely want to play it at some point.
Well, it's going to be published through Adlice Music Publishers. I'm not sure when it's going to be released, because I've got to do some slightly weird stuff with it. So the version I'm playing, as I said, obviously has large gaps in it because it's improvised. So it's a very different score, and obviously requires a harpist who is pretty experienced with improvising to fulfill those sections. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to publish 2 versions of it. So there's going to be one that's going to be the version that I play, which basically has all these blank parts, which says, right, go improvise. And I'm going to also do a second version where I'm going to write out improvisations for all the improvised bit, and it will be 100% written down. So then any harpist who, it doesn't matter what your experience or level of improvisation is, you could be 100% a classical performer and you'd be able to perform this piece, because it will be completely written out, and everything will be marked up properly is whatever you need to do. So there's going to be options for people. Obviously, I'm really excited for the idea of people going and performing the improvised version, because I'd love to hear what people make of the bits that obviously aren't written, and sort of how they interpret it. Because obviously, although I've not written the harp part, the orchestral part's there. So there's going to be a blend of what is there and what has been prescribed. And then there's going to be other stuff that obviously is missing. And things like the very beginning, I mean, the opening is a harp cadenza, which there's no instructions for it. So the improvised sections throughout the piece, obviously I've got the chord charts there for it, and you'll be directed to the harmonies that you need to use. The cadenza at the opening is just a blank bar. So any harpist who performs this could do whatever they want cadenza-wise for that, and then lead into the piece. Obviously, for the finished version, I will write a canon cadenza, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But that's, again, optional. So it's going to be interesting to see what different people make of this. And I'll be really keen to sort of like find out how people interpret it.
Mm-hmm. And where's the music going to be available once it's published?
So yeah, it's been published through Adlice Music Publishers, who are printed and distributed by Creighton's Collection. So you'll be able to order it from them when it's out. And we're also going to be we're going to do the full thing. So you'll be able to get all the harp score on its own. But then you'll be able to buy the actual score and the parts as well. And we're going to work something out so they're available for hire and things as well, for like orchestras and things. So yeah, be able to get it through Adlice Music, through Creighton's Collection. I might as well, if there is call for it, I might do a version for harp and like piano reduction or something, but I'm not so sure about that yet. But maybe like a small scale version, because obviously it's a symphony orchestra, so that limits opportunities to perform it. But there might be ways of doing it with a smaller group as well. But I have to see if I think that will work. So.
Yeah, and Creighton Collection is your dad's.
It's my father's printing and publishing company, and they print and distribute everything for Adlice. So yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna jump up for a second and grab, because I have all of your music. Yeah, so I'll show that to everybody here in just a second. But while I'm doing that, I wanted to ask you if you're doing any teaching coming up.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm always doing my sort of regular teaching. I do online sessions for people who are not based sort of in South Wales and stuff as well. For in-person stuff, sorry, I have. I'm trying to think now. What workshops have I got? I've not got any workshops in the diary immediately. When Adrian Chevalier comes over for the UK and French Gypsy Jazz tour with the Hot Club in May, he's going to do some violin workshops on Monday the 29th in Cardiff. And then I think we're going to be doing, we haven't released the details yet because it's not been firmed up. We're going to do a day of harp and violin workshops up in the northeast of England. But we've not 100% all sort of squared everything away. So I don't want to tell people dates and places without sort of like getting them right first. But yeah, we've got some of those that'll be coming out. And then sometimes the workshops are a bit like not as far in advance. So I'm sure there will be some. Oh, I know I'm teaching some. I'm doing something. I'm doing some workshops at Glasgow. Oh, I'm not sure. Actually, no, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to tell anyone that yet. So there is some stuff coming up. And the best thing to do would be to keep an eye on my Facebook page and my website and stuff as well. I usually do a fair amount of jazz workshops throughout the year. So there will be some in person if you want to do some jazz and improvisation. And like I say, if you ever want to do anything online as well, people only have to send me a message or an email. I'm very easy to get hold of. So
yeah, wonderful. So you mentioned earlier that you have this series, and so I just wanted to share with you guys what these are. It's a whole bunches and bunches of them.
yeah.
Charlie Parker's Yardbird Suite. I won't go through all of them, but I wanted you to see, Ben has notated this all out for us. So
yeah, so these are so in this series, most of these are arrangements of some popular jazz standards for solo harp. Everything's 100% written out, so you don't need to improvise, but you could obviously, all the chords from the original chord charts are there, so you could improvise over it if you wanted to and just forget about the stuff I put in. I have a couple of books of original compositions as well, some really easy jazz ones called Schnauzer Snippets. But they're all kind of, they're aimed at, those are the ones. They're aimed at primarily lever harp, but also pedal harp, and a slightly easier sort of level and working people through different styles. But again, they're not, you don't have to improvise with any of that stuff, but you could if you wanted to. And I'm gonna do, I've got a bit of a bug again for writing after doing the concerto because I didn't really write much for sort of the year and or so before that. So I'm gonna try and do some more stuff. I'm not too sure yet. I want to do some harp and violin jazz arrangements with Adrian from the Hot Club and some of the stuff we do. That'll be fun. And then I've got a few other ideas, some things I want to try and write and stuff as well. So there's going to be more sort of coming out, but there's quite a few things to have a little sort of look at and stuff on Creighton's collection. If you look, so
that's what I was going to say. That's all available on Creighton's collection, and
yes.
I'll put the link to that and when I publish this on the Facebook page, so people can get to your site and buy the music if they want to. So one of the things that was interesting to me is how you and Adrian work together, because you said he's in New York, you're in the UK. How do you practice together, or you don't?
We don't. No, we don't. Sometimes it depends exactly on what we're doing. So, for example, we played, so we did a gig at the World Harp Congress in Cardiff in July, and we did do one like hour and a half rehearsal, but that was because the bass player who played with us, Don hadn't played with us for like a really long time. So we wanted to just do rehearsals so we could jump straight in. But then like our regular bass player in the UK, Ashley, John Long, like we play together quite a lot. So we just tend to just jump straight in on things. If we can do like a rehearsal like a day before or something, we will, but it's literally just have a blast through everything, top and tail things a little bit. It's not the best thing in the world, I'll admit, because we want to do like more like newer repertoire and kind of work some things out, and we're limited on that time wise. But it's okay because Adrian plays the stuff we're playing. He's playing day in, day out in New York, like literally at least one gig a day, often more. I play a lot of the stuff sort of solo wise and stuff, and in different combinations. Sometimes I do other things in here and around Cardiff and stuff as well. So like we're still working on the music, but just not together. So yeah, it's not always the best thing, but it's not too tricky to kind of like jump straight back into it, because we've played together long enough now that we kind of like know what's going on kind of quite quite easily, I guess. So which happens when you've been playing with stuff, particularly with jazz and improvised music. When you play with the same people for quite a while, you get used to kind of like what they're doing and how they think and stuff. So you don't have to like kind of plan it so much, because you have an idea of what's going to happen anyway.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's you guys have been friends and been playing together for decades, so you've developed that
definitely helps.
relationship.
And when we do get together to play, it's quite intense for like a little while. We'll do a lot of gigs in a short period of time, so it's actually a lot of playing anyway. So it kind of like makes up for it being not that often. Though last year we did like 4 different tours, which was we saw each other a lot, which is quite nice. But obviously it'd been like 2 years in the pandemic that we hadn't played. So
Right.
yeah.
And you may have mentioned this when I stepped away, but you've got all these workshops coming up, but you also are teaching privately.
I have obviously I have a fair amount of like in-person students here in Cardiff that I teach like week in, week out, but I'm doing more and more online sessions with people from around the world and stuff. Generally that sort of thing is more for the improvising and jazz stuff. I do teach classically as well, but the people who come to me tend to be coming to me because of the jazz and stuff as well. So if anyone is ever wanting just like a one-off session or anything like that, I'm very easy to kind of get hold of and stuff like that. I know I quite enjoy it. It's nice to meet new people and have that opportunity to kind of like connect with people, I guess. So.
Yeah, and I really want to encourage everybody who's listening to do that, because that's how I met you, and I studied with Ben for about a year, I think. And
it's quite a while,
yeah, and it was just really wonderful experience. You're a really kind, generous teacher, and
thank you.
very knowledgeable. And I think jazz can seem like, if you're new to it, it can be like overwhelming and kind of scary.
It can be very intimidating. Absolutely, yeah.
But you made it very accessible, and it really helped me understand what's possible on the harp, what's not so easy to do on the harp, things that to make it that entry point really accessible. So
yeah.
I just want to encourage everybody that take advantage of this opportunity to study with Ben if you're so inclined. Yeah. Let me see. We've got about 15 more minutes. I wanted to see if anyone has questions, and then ask you if you could play a little bit for us.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because I think we'd love to hear some of what you've got coming up, and then if you've got some tips that you might offer to people who are just getting started, some ideas that they can practice on their own, and maybe bring back to you in a lesson or bring back to the group. Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, cool.
Well, let's see, we have a question here. Which electric harps do you recommend, and pedal or lever? Pedal and lever.
Okay, so the first thing, the pedal or the lever harp question. I don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers, but it's not incorrect to say trying to do jazz on the lever harp is a lot more difficult than on the pedal harp for the obvious reasons. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean you can't do some great things. I mean, obviously, Deborah is a perfect example of someone who does amazing things with the lever harp. I'm obviously primarily focused on pedal and have been for years, a long time. The difficulty for me when I'm looking at doing stuff with the lever harp is just trying to do that complete sort of thing when you're playing solo, of being able to do the bass and doing the chords and then also melody and stuff on top. So I think it's a matter of you have to kind of like pick your program a little bit more specifically and what you're kind of doing. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't mean I'm saying it doesn't work. It absolutely does. And when I'm doing workshops, the majority of the students taking them are on the lever harp, and they get an awful lot out of it and do an awful lot with that. In a band setting, that sort of difference between the lever and the pedal falls away a little bit, because you're not having to do everything. So if you're playing, let's say you're playing in like a combo with like, let's say a bass, drums, and a melody instrument, then you're not having to play the bass, so you don't need to worry about that. You're not having to play the melody, so you don't need to worry about that. And actually, you can just do the comping and stuff you can do on the lever harp pretty much as well as on the pedal harp. So yeah, but like for like all roundness and stuff like that, then yeah, really it's pedal is kind of like, for me, it's my focus, and it is kind of where I'm at, and it allows me to do what I need to do in sort of the best way that I can. When it comes to electric harps, I mean, obviously there's loads of options on the market. loads of fantastic harps from different manufacturers. This here is Hancock Big Blue, which is yeah, for me it's been fantastic, and it's allowed me to do everything I've needed to do. I am getting a new harp in the very near, as in like I think it's arriving next month. It is a Hancock. It is not a blue, but it is electric, and people will see about that very soon. But I'm super excited to get that. So yeah, lots of people. Well, keep an eye on my Facebook, and it'll sort of be there. So yeah, for me the system with the Hancock is brilliant. It allows me to do everything I need to with the sounds, soundscaping and manipulation and stuff. It's very easy to work with. I've had this for over 10 years, and touch wood, nothing has gone wrong with it at all. Which is that, you know, with electronics, things go wrong all the time. So that's fantastic to have that reliability. And then, of course, you got the fact that it's a very well-made, great sounding harp as well. So acoustically, it sounds wonderful. So yeah, this is what I play. This is what I've had electric-wise. And for me, I won't be moving away from the Hancock system because it's, like I say, it's fantastic. So yeah, when it comes to harps, that's sort of my choice. But there's other electric harps on the market. From a number of manufacturers. Obviously Salvi do some Line Healy as well, and some of it depends on like what harp you like to play and what sort of style sort of suits you acoustically as well as electric. So you should try sort of all of the harps out there and see sort of what suits you. But for me, this is what I like.
Okay, thanks so much. All right, so back to unless there are other questions, I'd love to hear you play a little bit.
Sure. So I will just let me ditch. I've got some awkward slippers on. So what I might do, I'm only going to play a little bit of this for you. I'm going to do a little bit from the ballads movement of my concerto, because this is about the only bit that works for the orchestra. Just so you can kind of like hear a little bit of the flavor and stuff, I guess. Yes, that's a little bit of the ballad, which is the third movement from the upcoming concerto. So yeah, unfortunately, the rest of it all needs sort of parts and everything with it, you know. But yeah, it's a little flavour of what's going to be coming. And if you're interested in hearing little bits more, I'm going to be putting a few sort of like snippets of stuff that I'm practicing working on for this sort of on my Facebook and Instagram and stuff. As we get sort of closer to the performance day and everything. So there'll be other little bits you can hear as well. So
It was just so sweet. I really just really please live stream this if you can.
yeah, I'll see what I can do with that. I'm hoping I can do something maybe, but yeah.
That would be lovely for those of us who can't get over the pond in time to see you there. Does anybody have any questions for Ben about anything we've talked about so far? So I would say Rebecca Maritsky, who's here in Denver, is also on the board of the American Harp Society for the local chapter here. So I just wanted to
cool.
Say to remind her to remind me that to get together and organize something for you when you get here. So,
yeah, that'd be cool.
Justine asks, do you have any recommended books for complete jazz newbies?
Yeah, so well, there's a few options. There is, if you want to go down the route, which might be a little scary, but you want like the complete sort of jazz theory book, the Mark Levine theory book, not the piano. He does two. There's a piano one and there's a regular one. Get the regular one because the piano one is literally, you need to do it on piano. It's like the Bible of jazz, I think. And it's a big, thick book, like 500 pages, but that covers absolutely everything you might ever want to cover. He explains it all very, very well. Obviously, it's a big read. Yeah, that's the one right there. It's a big read, but that is if you want something that has everything, that has, I think, everything. So yeah, that is a really fantastic book, but that is not an easy read.
It's a doorstop.
Yeah, it's a very much a coffee table book, isn't it? But it is great. There's a few. Jamie Aebersold has done quite a few really good books, and his come with like backing tracks, so you can practice improvising along to the tracks he's done and whatever. And he tends to do ones like focused on different concepts. There's one that he's done which is major to minor. I'm pretty sure he's done like one or two blues ones and things as well. So any of Jamie Aebersold's books are really, really good. I used quite a few of those when I was like learning piano and stuff. And there's also, oh, hang on, I'm gonna have to get this. There's one, oh yeah, Tim Richards, and it's called Improvising Blues Piano. That's quite a good book as well. Obviously focused on blues, but that's a pretty good book. So they're all really good theory books, and sort of well, not. I don't want to. Well, yeah, I mean the Mark Levine book is a theory book, but they're kind of like the other ones are also like aimed at like more playing and listening and stuff as well. So yeah, I recommend those. But obviously it can be a little bit intimidating to have a really big thick book like that. But if you want a challenge in a summer read or something, then I'd recommend that.
Yeah, there's also, it's kind of hard to find now, but it's called Playing Blues on the Harp by I. Mac Perry.
Okay, I don't know that one.
He's passed away now, but he was a student of Deborah's
okay.
And then wrote a book. I'll pull that off my shelf in a second here as well to share that with you guys. Other questions? So do you have some exercises that you like to share with absolute beginners to get them started on some improvisation?
I, rather than looking at specific exercises, I try and get people into playing like tunes as quickly as possible, because I think it's quite so exercises are great to do and absolutely there's loads and loads of different ones out there to do. But I think it's always good to get someone playing like a piece as soon as possible, because then you can hear a little bit of like progress and kind of like, you know, actually I'm playing this particular piece and whatever. So I kind of like try and, if I'm working with like one-to-one, I try and find sometimes people come to me with particular tunes. It was Nature Boy, I think, was one of the ones that you were looking at when you first came to me. So like quite often people come and say like, oh, I really like this tune, and that's what I'm gonna look at. And usually people come with sensible choices and ones that are actually, this is not too bad for someone who's sort of like started off. Obviously, if you come to me with like some with like Cherokee or like Giant Steps or something, then I'm going to say maybe you need to like think of something else. But yeah, that actually for me is a better way of doing it. And then what you do is there's different exercises and concepts that you work on within the sort of format of the tune. So for example, you can use, I've got some at the moment I'm working with, doing for example Black Orpheus. So Black Orpheus is a good tune to learn the concepts and the ideas behind like bossa nova rhythms and stuff with, because it's a good bossa nova. It's great, and it's also not too harmonically demanding. So I kind of do it in that sort of way rather than having specific exercises to start off with. But if you do want some ideas, it can be quite good to take try and, if you want to look at like some modal stuff, for example, getting used to moving, like pairing each mode to the chord. So you have like a D minor and you play D Dorian over it. And then obviously you've got your 2-5-1s, say D to G to C, and working through like little chord progressions like that and getting used to kind of the changes in moving through different chords and things. Other stuff that can be good, put me on the spot a little bit now. Other things that can be quite good is, a blues. A blues is a great way to kind of like get some improvising experience, because it's not too tricky on the chords. You could do like a 3-trick like chord blues, with just C7, F7, G7 sort of thing. Learn the blues scale, and then you can use that as a vehicle to learn about like motif-based playing and moving like phrases through different keys and stuff like that. Again, you can cover some modes with blues because you don't have to use the blues scale over it. So like blues are a really good place to start. Actually, that was the first thing I did on piano, was 12-bar blues. So yeah, it's little things like that. But like I say, my focus usually is actually to get people playing actual pieces first, and then you take stuff from that and derive exercises from what's in front of you. So that's kind of what I like to do anyway.
Okay, great. I just grabbed a few more books off my shelf that I just wanted to show people. Here's one of the Jamie Aebersold. He's written dozens and dozens.
Oh yeah, he's got a massive library of stuff. I've not been through all of his stuff, but all the stuff of his that I've had has been great, really, really good. And he's got everything that scratches different niches as well.
Comes with I don't have a CD player anymore, but the music is out there. This is the How to Play the Blues by I. Perry. This is specifically for the harp. And it's got a lot of history. It's got a little bit of theory. It's got different licks, blues licks in here. Here's some 12-bar blues exercises written out. And this book is a little hard to find now because this guy has passed away. And then I have this one too. This is Felice Pomeranz's book from Berklee Music. That's got a lot of the 2-5-1 kind of exercises that you're talking about in there, and she also teaches online. So this is a pretty good book too to get started into some jazz stuff if you're looking for books specifically. And I'll try to put links to all of these. I've been encouraging Ben to write his own book for a couple of years now.
Yeah, it's a lot of obviously it's a big project, but I can't really use that as an excuse now because I've just done literally the biggest project I probably could. My one feeling on this is I kind of feel I don't really have too much to add by writing a book necessarily, because I feel like if someone wants to come to me and ask like, oh, do you recommend a jazz theory book? I'm not going to write anything better than the Mark Levine book. So I'm like, well, I would rather you have that and then work with me. I know it's terrible sales practice, I know, but I'd much rather say, no, you get this book that's really, really good and has been sort of, is used by people the world over for different instruments and things. And then my sort of thing is I'll help you apply it to the harp. And that is for me, I think that's quite an abstract concept to write down. because how you apply it to the harp will depend on the piece you're playing, depend on the style you're playing. It depends, are you playing in a group, are you playing solo? Are you playing pedal or lever, all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of like my thoughts on it. And I definitely could go and write a book, but I don't feel I've got anything to add that someone else hasn't already added, either a non-harpist, like say the Mark Levine book, or indeed, you know, that there's quite a few different harp improvisation books out there written by a few different people now. I don't feel I'm adding anything, so I'm not too sure that I need to kind of go down that route. I would much rather write, if I'm going to spend time writing, like write some music and maybe some arrangements or something like that, and then sort of go from there. But it doesn't mean I won't do it. Maybe if I find a particular topic that takes my interest with it, but I don't think I would go to all that effort of writing like a big theory book covering all these different things, and I don't feel I'd be adding anything to sort of the library that's already out there. So that's the only reason why. Yeah. So yeah.
I'll ask everybody if they have one last question, because we're just a few minutes over time. But is it possible to play giant steps on the pedal harp?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely is. If you want to play it as a solo, that's going to be quite demanding. You can do it in a band, because I've played it myself, and I've sat and heard other harpists play it as well. So no, it's absolutely possible. It's just really, really hard. So yeah, I'll
be back to you on that personally. That's a goal.
It's a big project.
It is a big project. Yes, it is. All right. Any other questions from anybody? All right. I wanted to thank you so much for your time today, Ben. And
no worries at all. Thank you for having me.
Helpful for everyone to listen into this exciting work, and the world of jazz harp is just getting bigger and bigger, and more of us are playing, and more of us are improvising, and that's my goal in my Facebook group, is to just keep encouraging people to try stuff. Try it and see what happens. Try it and see what happens. Try it and see what happens, because that's how you learn. And then, if something sounds funny, just play it twice and call it jazz. That's the joke, right? Malia says, thanks very much. Justine says, thanks very much. I say, thanks very much. And we'll be in touch about Bex and I, and get together with the American Harp Society here and get something on the schedule for you when you get here to Denver. That would be awesome.
That'd be brilliant. Yeah, I'd love that.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.